work? I said, okay, tell me. He said, it's a neurological grid. You make your readers abnormally conscious of 23s and they ignore all the other numbers. And I said, congratulations, you found the great magician who makes the grass green. According to Zen Buddhism, you are now enlightened. And then after a while, we decided we have a friendly chat. We decided to go get a pizza. We went to this pizza place. They give you a number while you wait for your pizza. Of course, we got number 23. He said, how do you do it? And I said, thought you did it that time. I mean, when this kind of thing starts haunting you, you find out that any philosophy you can invent fails to account for it. Synchronicity isn't a theory at all. It's a word that Jung made up and pretended he had a theory to go with it, but in the scientific sense, there is no theory of synchronicity. It's just a label for a phenomenon that tends to occur when you're in depth analysis, Freudian or Jungian, when you do a lot of LSD, or if you do a lot of Oriental meditation, or if you practice Western Kabbalistic magic. And it happens to ordinary people too, but it happens much more likely if you belong to one of those 5 groups. If you belong to all 5 of those groups, the synchronicities accumulate so much that you start to think, to quote Aleister Crowley, the whole universe is an individual dealing of God with your personal soul.
So when one starts investigating conspiracies, suddenly, by the same principle, facts backing up the conspiracy seem to pop from the woodwork?
Oh, yeah. It's like the Law of Fives, created by Kerry Thornley before he started remembering or imagining his connection with the CIA and brainwashing programs and so on. The Law of Fives holds that everything in the universe is directly connected to the number 5. Sometimes I restate it as given enough ingenuity on the part of the interpreter, but usually I leave that out and leave it in Kerry's form and leave the reader to figure it out for himself. But take, for instance, 666, the number of the beast. How the hell is that connected to 5? Well, add it up. 666, it adds to 18. 18, 1 plus 8 equals 9. 9 is 3 squared. There you got your 3 and your 2. 3 plus 2 equals 5. You see how easy it is? That only took 3 steps.
So because the mind is searching for those kind of connections, it's putting them together wherever it can.
Yeah, I'd like to do a book sometime on great blunders by intelligent people, because when you start looking for something, you tend to find, this wouldn't be like Simon Newcomb, the great astronomer who wrote a mathematical proof that heavier than air flight was impossible and published it a day before the Wright brothers took off. I'm talking about people who found a pattern in nature and wrote several scientific articles and got it accepted by a large part of the scientific community before it was generally agreed that there was no such pattern. It was all just selective perception. This happens over and over. And if it happens to scientists, imagine how much more often it happens to artists.
Can you give us an example of 1 or 2 conspiracies that you actually think are probably true?
The Kennedy assassination. I've never been satisfied with the Warren Commission. None of the Kennedy assassination buffs have convinced me that they got the right explanation, but I do feel there was some fiddle-faddle going on there, especially in relation to the wounds. You can't read the report from Parkman General Hospital at Dallas and the report from Bethesda in Maryland that evening without seeing the body was altered. The Parkman wounds, as described by them, seemed to fit what the doctors there thought it was. 2 shots from the front. The Bethesda wounds seemed to fit the Warren Commission theory of 3 shots from the rear. And the body was altered. The wounds changed their size, they changed their location. I don't claim to know who did it or why or anything like that. That's where every Kennedy assassination buff loses me. After they knock holes in the official theory, then they give their own theory, which doesn't sound any more plausible than the official theory. I don't know what happened, but I think there was a lot of deception of the public going on at that time. One theory I have considered, which most conspiracy buffs don't like because it's too tame, maybe all that was going on was that Oswald, like quite a few other defectors, genuinely defected to Russia, let's say, as a hypothesis. We can make a more complicated one. He only pretended to defect and was working for the CIA all along. But let's say he genuinely defected. He got disillusioned. He wanted to get out of Russia. He went to the State Department. They said, we'll help you get out, but in return you got to work for us and pretend you're working for the KGB when you go back to the States. And so he's working for the KGB and the CIA at the same time. This is very common in espionage. It goes on all the time, the double agent system. Licio Gelli was working for the Gestapo and the Communist Underground, both during the Second World War. In the 1970s, while he was running the Pay Due Gladio conspiracy out of Rome, he was being paid by both the CIA and the KGB. This is very common. So Oswald comes back, he's working for two intelligence agencies, and for one reason or another he cracks up, he gets pissed off, whatever you want to say, he decides to commit an assassination, and he does it. Everybody's trying to cover up his connection with their agency, and so all the evidence gets twisted around to cover up the connection with their intelligence agency. And there was no conspiracy at all, except a conspiracy to conceal the fact that he was working for more than one intelligence agency. That's a minimalist Kennedy assassination conspiracy theory. I know a lot more dramatic ones than that, but they don't quite convince me. That one doesn't convince me either, but it's more plausible than most, I think.
What other cases can you come up with that you feel are probably true?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would put around 9.5. The closest to the absolute truth in my system of thought, that the government of the United States and most other governments, quite a few other governments, are largely controlled by the rich. And the democratic elections do not change anything because you're offered always a choice between two people, or as I say these days, my latest terminology, two lying bastards, both of whom are in the bag to the same major corporation. So it doesn't matter which one of them you vote for, the major corporations are going to be running the government. Like I said, I give that a 9.5. Maybe somebody got elected without getting millions of dollars from the major corporations, but I haven't heard of it. Usually the third-party candidates who don't get contributions from the big corporations, they not only don't get on the major media, but the major media mentions them only in passing to say third parties never win. That's the only thing you ever hear about third parties on